They mocked her cracked scope until one impossible shot turned silence into fear. The sun hung low over Camp Vortan, casting golden light across the dusty training ground. Recruits lined the firing range, rifles slung over their shoulders, chests puffed with bravado. Among them stood Lyra Hale, a small, quiet girl with unruly black hair tied into a messy ponytail and a rifle that looked like it had been dragged behind a truck. Her scope was cracked. Not scratched, cracked. Diagonally, like a jagged lightning bolt frozen in glass. Recruits whispered, "Where'd she get that thing? A trash can? Doesn't even know how to maintain her own weapon." "Look, the scope's literally taped on." Lyra ignored them. She always did. While others polished their weapons like trophies, Lyra held hers like a memory, gentle, respectful. It wasn't pretty, but it was hers, and she knew every quirk, every rattle, every inch of steel. At the center of the range stood Instructor Roven, a towering man with a scar crossing his cheek like a knife mark. His voice carried the weight of 20 campaigns. "Today," he barked, "we test precision. Targets 800 meters. Wind harsh. Heat unforgiving. I don't care who you are. Your shots speak louder than your rank." Recruits stepped forward one by one, firing, missing, adjusting, cursing. Then came Lyra's turn. The laughter started before she even positioned herself. "She's actually going to use that? Try not to hit the sun, Lyra. Maybe the crack improves her accuracy." Lyra lay prone, steady, breathing slow. Instructor Roven approached her, boots crunching dust. He crouched beside her, inspecting the rifle. One look at the broken scope, and he raised a brow. "Reckon you can see anything through that, Hale?" Lyra's voice was quiet but unwavering. "I don't need to see clearly, sir. I just need to know where it is." The recruits burst out laughing. Roven didn't. Instead, he stood up, turned to the others, and said, "Stand back." The laughter died. He crossed his arms, eyes narrowing. "She doesn't miss." The recruits stared as Lyra settled into position, but their eyes weren't on the target. They were on the cracked scope, the taped barrel. The girl who dared to show up with a weapon half the camp would have thrown away, but Roven had seen something they hadn't. He knew her story. Years ago, before she joined the training corps, Lyra lived in the borderlands, where the wind always smelled of dust and smoke, and life was survival more than living. Her father, a retired marksman, taught her the art of stillness. They would sit on dunes for hours, watching storms roll across the wastelands. "Skill isn't in the tool," he'd say, adjusting her grip gently. "It's in the stillness behind the trigger." When raiders attacked their settlement, Lyra, only 13, picked up her father's old rifle and fired 3 shots in the storming night. 3 raiders fell, 3 bullets. No scope, no hesitation. Her father didn't survive the attack, but his rifle did. The same rifle she carried now. The same cracked scope broken during the chaos. She never replaced it. To her, replacing it would be like replacing him. Back on the firing line, Lyra inhaled slowly, letting the noise fade. The teasing voices melted away. Her heartbeat slowed. The world narrowed until there was only the target. A tiny metal plate glinting far, far away. Wind steady. Distance memorized. Rifle familiar. Lyra's finger tightened. Bang. A clear, echoing ting floated back. Direct hit. Murmurs rose. Someone cursed under their breath. "Lucky shot." Roven shook his head. "Watch." Lyra shifted her aim just a hair. Bang. Ting. Another clean hit, faster than anyone could blink. She fired again. Bang, ting. 3 for 3. No hesitation. No adjustment. No wasted breath. The recruits stared, disbelief written on their faces. Roven stepped forward, voice calm, almost proud. "Her scope is broken. Her rifle is ancient. But Hale here? She hits like the desert storms, quiet, precise, and unstoppable." Lyra didn't smile. She didn't even react. She simply reloaded, breathing steady. To her, this wasn't showing off. This was breathing. Roven wasn't done. "All right," he said, turning toward the recruits. "You think that was luck? Let's raise the stakes." He pointed toward the far cliffs, jagged stone peaks 3 kilometers away. Atop one of them hung a tiny metal plate, barely visible even with a clean scope. The range collectively sucked in a breath. "No way." "That's impossible." Even with a perfect rifle? Rovan cut them off. Hale, you up for it? Lyra hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of calculation. Wind's heavy on the cliffs, she murmured. Bullet drop will be steep. A pause. I'll need to aim at the cloud line. Someone scoffed. She's delusional. Rovan raised a hand. Silence. Lyra dropped prone again. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing didn't jump. The world shrank into a small circle of purpose. She aligned her eye with the cracked scope. The fracture line bisected the lens, but she'd long learned to use its angles as reference points. The recruits watched, confused. She wasn't aiming at the cliff at all. She aimed high, absurdly high, toward a patch of drifting clouds. Is she trying to shoot the wind? Lyra exhaled. Bang. The bullet traveled into the sky, arcing like a thrown stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, ting. Clear, loud, impossible. The recruits froze. One dropped his rifle. Another's mouth hung open. Someone whispered, "She's not human." Rovan simply nodded as if he expected it. You think a fancy rifle makes a marksman? He said, voice ringing across the range. Hale here sees the world differently. She doesn't fight the wind, she listens to it. Lyra finally pushed herself up, dusting her elbows. She looked calm, almost bored. To her, long shots were meditation. To them, it was sorcery. The mood shifted. The mockery died. A strange silence filled the air, respect mixed with fear. But the day wasn't done, because the universe has a habit of testing those who rise. Just as recruits began whispering awestruck praise, the base alarm blared long and shrill. Camp intrusion. A rogue drone swarm approached, fast, unpredictable. Targets no one could hit, except maybe one person. Rovan turned to Lyra. You ready? She nodded once. The sky darkened as drones swarmed over the horizon. Sleek, black machines moving in erratic spirals. Their targeting lasers flickered like red fireflies. Recruits panicked, scrambling for cover. These things dodge bullets. They're too fast! We're sitting targets. But Lyra didn't move towards safety. She moved forward. Rovan's voice boomed. Anyone who cannot shoot moving targets, fall back. Everyone fell back. Everyone except Lyra. Her cracked scope rifle looked ridiculous compared to the specialized tech housed on base, all those top-tier weapons now trembling in the hands of recruits, who suddenly felt small. Rovan joined her side. You don't have to do this alone. Lyra shook her head softly. I'm not. She meant her father. She meant every dusty afternoon training under burning suns. She meant the quiet strength she carried like a second heartbeat. The first drone swooped low, zigzagging. Lyra raised the rifle. Not rushed. Not frantic. Just steady. Bang. The drone burst into sparks. The next dove at a sharp angle. She pivoted. Bang. Another explosion of metal. She moved like she knew their rhythm. Like she could see the invisible lines they carved in the air. Recruits stared spellbound. Rovan gave her space, watching her with something like awe. Drone after drone fell. Not one wasted bullet. Not one missed shot. Her cracked scope caught glints of sunlight, as if mocking the idea that it should have been a weakness. Smoke filled the range as the last drone descended, a heavy one, armored, zigzagging wildly. Even Rovan tensed. That's a hard shot. Lyra breathed in. Wind, shifting. Speed increasing. Trajectory, unpredictable. She closed her eye. Her father's voice echoed. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, Lyra. It's the choice to move only when it matters. She fired. The bullet split the air. The drone swerved. Straight into its path. A fireball bloomed in the sky. Lyra lowered her rifle. Silence. Then, holy... That was insane. Recruits crowded closer, no longer mocking, only reverent. Rovan placed a hand on her shoulder. Hale, you just saved this camp. She nodded once, simply replying, I was trained for storms. In the aftermath, the sky cleared, leaving drifting smoke trails across the horizon. The remains of the drone smoldered on the range. Recruits gathered in stunned silence, staring at Lyra like she was something carved into legend. She just sat in the dirt cleaning her rifle, carefully wiping dust from the cracked scope. One of the recruits finally approached. Hale, can you show me how you did that shot? The cliff one? Another added. And the drones. How do you track them so fast? Lyra blinked, confused. These were the same people who laughed at her hours ago. Now they stood like students in front of a master. Rovan walked up behind her. She'll teach when she's ready. For now, give her space. The recruits backed away. He crouched beside her. You know they're never going to underestimate you again. Lyra shrugged, continuing her cleaning. I don't care if they do. Rovan chuckled. Of course you don't. After a pause, he spoke softly, seriously. That rifle. It belonged to someone important, didn't it? She froze. Her fingers tightened around the stock. Yes, she whispered. It was my father's. Rovan nodded. And that crack? He saved my life with this scope. Grabbed the rifle when the raider fired. The bullet cracked the lens, not my skull. Rovan exhaled slowly. So you keep it not because you can't replace it, but because you won't. Lyra nodded once. Rovan stood, voice rising so all could hear. Listen up, recruits. Everyone straightened instantly. This girl just handled a drone swarm with a rifle older than half of you. You laughed at her broken scope. You mocked her. But today you saw the truth. He pointed at Lyra. She doesn't need perfect tools. She is the perfection. Lyra looked up, startled. Rovan continued. From today onward, Hale will serve as senior cadet marksman. Anyone who doubts her can challenge her, but I wouldn't. A ripple of nervous laughter spread. And respect. Real respect. Lyra stood, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. She glanced at the recruits, not with pride, not with arrogance, but with a quiet, unshakable calm. The same calm she had when taking impossible shots. As she walked off the range, whispers followed her, not mocking, not cruel, but admiring. Did you see her aim? That broken scope. She made it look magical. She's a legend already. Lyra didn't react. She didn't need to. She knew who she was. A storm in stillness. A marksman without equal. The girl who never missed.